Hello everyone, welcome to part 3 of the Octopath Traveler Tutorial Series for Smile Game Builder. Today, we're going to be covering some basics in making objects in Blender. The Blender portion of this series will be the longest portion spanning parts 3 to 6. Today we'll be learning to model and texture a box and barrel object using pixel art as the texture. First, we'll need to start in our image editing software to prep our textures. I'm going to use the box and barrel from the same Final Boss Blues Fantasy Pack I used in part 1. The way that these are set up are, again, in tile pieces. What we'll need to do is start copying pixel art that we want into a single file. I'm going to create a texture for each, so I'm going to make a box texture and a barrel texture. I'm going to see how big this is. In Photoshop, it'll tell you how big your selection is. So this is 15 by 20, 15 by 24, 16 by 24. For that, it's probably about the same. Yeah, so I'm going to start out with a texture file. So to make it 32 by 32. Okay. Now, I'm going to start with the box. So I'm going to select our box, copy, Control-C, and paste into the new file, Control-V. That's all we need to get started for the box. Let's go ahead and save this as a new file. I'm going to export this as PNG. I'm going to put it in the assets folder that I started making. So here I'm going to create an objects folder. And then I'm going to save this as box. Okay. So that texture is now called box.png. Let's do the same thing for the barrel. I'm just going to copy it into the same file I was using here and just export it as a one. So I'm going to delete this one and put the barrel in there. And I'm going to file, export, and we'll call this one barrel. Alright, so I have my textures. Next, we're going to start in Blender. I'm going to be using Blender 2.9. This is a newer version of Blender, so if you're using an older one and you already know how to use Blender, then you may not need everything that I'm going to tell you here. But just to start very basic, when you start up a new file in Blender, you always start with a camera, a light, and a cube. I use right-click as select, but you can set up Blender however you wish. So I'm going to select the light, and I'm going to hit X on my keyboard and delete it. And do the same thing for the camera. You'll notice that sometimes if you click off somewhere, your cursor may change. To recenter your cursor, you need to hit Shift-C. That's what I'm going to do. Now the box is perfect for what we need to start with. So let's go ahead and start with the cube. What I'm going to do is put my view into orthographic mode and from the front, and that's just 1 on the number pad. So I'm going to hit 1 on the number pad, and then I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. Edit mode lets you select vertices, and you can also change to edge mode, which allows you to select edges. Faces mode allows you to choose faces. What I'm going to do is hit 1 again, and then I'm going to hit A on my keyboard. It's going to select all faces if you're in faces mode. And then I'm going to hit S on the keyboard, which is going to initiate scale mode. And I'm going to press 0.5. I'm going to scale it by half. So the reason I wanted to do that is if you'll look at my grid here, each one of these grid sizes, basically, if you play your cards right, these grid sizes are going to be the same grid size as Smile Game Builder. So what I'm going to do is move this box up into ground level. So I'm going to press G, that initiates move mode. And then I'm going to press Z, so I only move it in the Z axis. And I'm going to hold Control, which will allow me to move it on the grid. So I'm going to get it level with the red line, which is your X axis. To rotate around your object, I hold middle mouse button. Again, I'm in right click mode, so these may be different for you depending on what mode you select in Blender. Alright, so now that we have the box just about how we want it in size, I'm actually going to scale it just a hair bit more because I like my boxes to be a little bit smaller than the character. So I'm going to hold Control again. I'm hitting S. First I hit S, and then I'm holding Control, and I'm going to scale it down to about there where it's one more small grid size smaller. So there we go. And I think that'll be a good size for our box. Next, we're going to cover textures, but first I'm going to save this in the folder that I created for objects. So I'm going to go to Save As. I'm going to go to where it is on my computer. Objects. I'm going to save this as one box. Okay. Now, to texture, I'm going to go to the UV editing tab here. Alrighty, so this should give us a window where we have UV editing. We're able to load in a texture for our object and start UV editing here. The box comes with a default UV map, which might or might not work for our needs, so I'll show you how this works. First, we need to create a material for our object. So this is your materials tab. I'm going to hit New. This will create us a blank material. I'm going to call it, I double clicked in there, I'm going to call it box. Okay, and then right here where it says base color, I'm going to click here and go to image texture. I'm going to click open, and then I'm going to choose the box. All right, so there's our texture. To zoom in and zoom out, you can use your mouse wheel. All right, so I'm just going to take these faces individually. I'm going to select a face. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to make sure all of that is selected, and then I'm going to move this into the frame. All right. So you can see that it's off. I need to rotate it until the bottom is on the bottom. So this would be the bottom right here. It needs to match up right there. So I just hit R and held Control as I was rotating, so it snapped. All right, so I'm gonna get this all selected, and then I'm gonna hit scale, which is S again on the keyboard, and I'm gonna scale by X. And I'm gonna match it up as close as I can to the perimeters of this box. Okay. And I'm gonna do the same thing for every face here. So I'm gonna quickly move these. Alright, there we go. Alright, so now we're going to do the top. So where the lid starts for me, or at least from what I like to see, is right where that there we go. Darker pieces. The next thing we need to do, I'm going to get this bottom face and I'm going to delete it. We're never going to see it, so I always hit select the face, press X, and delete the face, because again, you're never going to see that face. It's always going to be on the ground, so it's just wasted rendering basically. Okay, so we're going to go to export as FBX. I'm just going to keep the name as box in the objects folder, export, and then we're going to go into Smile Game Builder. Okay, so once you have Smile Game Builder open, This time we're going to go to Add Assets. We're going to go to Maps, Objects, click Add, and click your box. So it's important here, since we're using the Blender grid size, we want to, we want it optimized for Smile Game Builder. We're going to check this box here to optimize it automatically. Then we're going to set our size to 0.01. This will just ensure that it imports at the right grid size for Smile Game Builder, and it's how we want it to be. So once I hit add, it's added. So what we can do is it'll add a folder here for boxes. I'm going to go to box, and there's our box. And you can see it right there. We'll hit 1 as the elevation. If you want to give it a height, we'll close this, go to Objects, and then go to the Objects tab. And I have a whole bunch of stuff that I've already made, but here's the box that I just made. We're going to put it in the scene, and voila, we have a box. And what you can do is just test it if you'd like. Play your game. You want to make sure it's the right size to your character. And I'd say, for me, that's a pretty good size. It's up to you how you want to do yours, but it looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to keep it at that. So let's move on to the barrel. I'm going to save my blend file, and I'm going to go to New, General, Save As. We're going to save this as the barrel. So we're going to save as barrel, and we're going to hit. So my file starts with nothing in it. If you need to, you'll have to delete all the objects because we're going to start with nothing. Let's hit Shift A and go to Mesh, Cylinder. Shift A, Mesh, and then Cylinder. This gives you a nifty little window over here to select how many vertices your cylinder is going to be. I'm going to choose 8. All right, and that'll be perfect for our barrel. Okay, so we have an 8-sided barrel here. I'm going to go into object mode by hitting tab, hit scale 0.5 by half, and then press G, Z, and move on the Z axis there, holding control. So it's level with the ground. So I'm going to speed up a little bit just so things are moving along, since I've already covered the shortcuts already. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our material. Do the same thing here, call it barrel. We're going to go to base color, image texture, and then we're going to open our image texture, barrel. Alrighty. And then we'll go to UV editing. And then we're going to go to, I'm going to use the material mode. Okay. And I'm going to start setting up my barrel. Okay, so I'm going to start grabbing these faces right here. And what we'll do is, so I'm going to grab these faces here and then make sure that they're selected over here and scale these down. And I'm going to get it into place here. Scale by X. And basically what I'm going to do is do that for every set of 2 here. So every set of 2 I can find, let's set that as this front part here. Okay, same thing here. Move this down, scale on the X. There we go. See, I have a little bit of overlap here. I'm just going to scale up by the X there. Okay, and it won't be so bad once it's in Smile. Then I'm going to grab the lid and just scale this guy here, scale on the X, and boom, we've got our lid. Try not to get any of that silver part. There we go. And then It's that easy. We've got our barrel textured. I'm going to leave this part untextured because I'm only going to have this part of the barrel show in the game, the front part. So we're not going to see this. I'm going to select this face, and this face, and I'm going to hit X and hit delete faces. There we go. All right. Pretty simple. File, export as FBX, and then we're going to import it. We'll go to add assets, maps, objects, add barrel. I've already added it, but that's okay. Go to our barrel object, hit elevation 1, make sure we have an elevation, and then we'll place our barrel in the scene. And there we go. It's a big barrel. So let's do what we did before and resize it down to the right size. So we'll go to hit tab again to get into edit mode and scale this, and use control to scale it on the grid and scale it down 2 notches there. Go down Z, get it floor level, and then file, export as FBX, barrel, add again, maps, objects, add barrel, and voila, there's our barrel. All right. Again, we can test it in our scene. All right, and now it's in our scene. So this will conclude part 3 of the tutorial. We will continue with adding objects such as grass and trees in the next episode, and I will show you how to do some simple animations for those grass and tree objects, just like the ones you see here. I hope you'll join me, and happy game building.